KFT. Welcome to Bryan Lehrer Live. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30 on Channel 75 and live on the web at CUNY.TV. Now, what kind of movie trailer could be so controversial it would get banned on the Upper West Side? Well, the answer is the trailer for the forthcoming film about September 11th called United 93. We will show you that controversial trailer in just a minute as we continue our series featuring newsworthy and viral video that's making the rounds on the web. With me as our viewing partner for this week's web video tour is Bryan Keefer. He's co-editor of the website Spinsanity.com, which tries to play truth cop for political rhetoric from the right, the left, and anywhere else. Hi, Bryan. Welcome to the program.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right to our first clip. And before we roll this, I do want to warn you that this is a movie trailer that audiences around the New York area have been finding very disturbing because of the 9/11 related footage. So if you don't want to see this, if you're afraid of being disturbed by it or that others in your home might be disturbed by it, turn off your television for about the next 2 or 3 minutes or flip to another channel. But this is the trailer for the movie United 93. Now, the premise of the film is simple, but even the premise is in a way shocking in its own right. It is a real-time recreation of the hijacked flight that the passengers brought down over Pennsylvania. Real time, meaning the movie lasts the length of the actual flight in real life, kind of like what they do with the TV show 24. And it was exactly this real-time experience, or the hint of it, that was so difficult for some of the moviegoers at the Lincoln, the Lincoln Square Theater, the big one, the 12-plex at Broadway and 68th Street, to handle. So let's watch the trailer, which will still be shown at other theaters, by the way, and which is available and being widely viewed online. Here it is.
We are going to go over to Chris and talk about the forecasting, which is a very good one.
Yeah, actually, conducive to just heading out and enjoying a day. Neighborhood weather at East.
Hey, this is Sandy in the back. Can you call ground and see if we can get some more pillows and blankets?
The white zone is for immediate.
The meeting last night was great.
I'm sure he's thrilled.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin boarding. Will all of our first-class passengers please make their way over to gate 17?
Good morning, sir. He's just made it. 4D?
Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, looks like we've run into a little bit of rush hour traffic this morning. Unfortunately, it's going to be about a 30-minute delay. I appreciate your patience. We're currently number 1 for departure. Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff, please.
I'd like to be home with my babies.
United 93, runway 4 left, clear for takeoff.
Roger that.
Sir, CNN's reporting a light civil aircraft has just hit the World Trade Center.
Man, that's a lot of smoke. We got another one. We got another hijack?
9175 dropped his transponder off.
Got a possible hijack. Weapons. Scramble those fighters in over Manhattan. Copy that.
We've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet, and I'm going to turn the fasten seatbelt sign off. You are safe to move about the cabin.
Descending rapid.
This aircraft is going down, I'm telling you right now.
Here's one with juice for you.
No, there he is. There he is right there. Okay, we're at the Hudson River.
This is a hijack. He's going to hit this guy. Oh, look at that.
Oh my gosh.
2 aircraft hit the World Trade Center. Just left north, the weather was beautiful.
We have a plane headed toward the Capitol.
What the hell is wrong out there?
May we engage, sir?
I am on a plane that has been hijacked.
Yes, sir. I got F-16 turning and burning towards Washington.
2 planes just hit the World Trade Center.
Nobody's going to help us. We have to do something right now. Colonel, I need rules of engagement. Do we shoot this flight down?
We have to do it now, because we know what happens if we just sit here and do nothing.
So if people went to see the Spike Lee thriller Inside Man over the weekend at the Lincoln Plaza, they would have seen that trailer before the film, and there were enough complaints afterwards that the Lincoln Plaza Cinema has actually decided to pull that. They will not be showing that trailer on their screens, although as far as we know, all the other movie theaters in town that are running it, and this film is going to be out on a lot of screens at the end of the month, that they are still showing that trailer. So, Bryan Keefer, let's talk about that, and let me apologize for misidentifying your website. It's cjrdaily.org. CJR is for the Columbia Journalism Review.
Yes.
cjrdaily.org. As you watch the media, watch everything else.
Exactly.
This is the first time I can remember a trailer getting so much attention and becoming a controversy in its own right.
Well, I mean, I personally found that deeply disturbing when I was watching it this morning. It's just, it's so emotionally intense. I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, but for people who were living in New York City, it must be doubly intense. I mean, this is just, you know, you see the video of the trade centers burning again, and it's something that I think is burned into everybody's mind already. And so I personally don't think I can handle watching a movie like this. I've kind of stayed away from all the 9/11 related documentaries and things like that just because it is so intense.
I do want to open the phones on this. I suspect that we have some viewers who are at one movie theater or another over the weekend when this trailer made its debut. Did you see it? If so, do you think it was appropriate to show it before perhaps some piece of entertainment that you went to see over the weekend? And would you see a movie about Flight 93, United Flight 93, that takes place in real time like this? Of course, this is the one where the passengers were true heroes, bringing down the flight and sacrificing their own lives in the process before it could go to its intended target, which I think they believed to be the White House or the Capitol at that time. So our phone number is 212-251-0801, 212-251-0801. Did you see this trailer? How did it affect you if you did see the trailer? Do you think it was inappropriate to show the trailer? Would you like them to pull it from the other screens in town? And do you think you would see this movie, being a New Yorker, obviously, and perhaps a New Yorker who was here during 9/11? So 212-251-0801 is our phone number, 251-0801. And Bryan, remember, we're playing this on this program in the context of our web video series, because this trailer is available on the web, and people are going to it in part because of the controversy that's been generated in the media the last few days.
Absolutely. Anytime there's controversy over something like this, it's usually pretty good for the box office. So it doesn't surprise me that this is getting downloaded quite a bit.
And it's a different experience, I think, even if people object to having it shown on a screen. You know, when people go to the web voluntarily to see something that they've heard about, I think the whole issue at the Lincoln Plaza was the fact that here people were being hit with something that they were completely unprepared for as they were going out for a night of entertainment that hit emotionally so close to home.
Yeah, well, it's the same principle behind warnings on television, or the warning you gave before we showed the clip, where people have fair notice that they're going to get something that intense. And when people are exposed to it, you think back to the Super Bowl halftime show where Janet Jackson's breast was exposed and all of the FCC complaints that came out of that. I think it's much more shocking when you don't expect it and when it just sort of happens to you, rather than, you know, watching an episode of The Sopranos on HBO where you're expecting something like that.
Let's take a phone call. Liz in Sunset Park, you're on the program. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi, I think that part of the reason why people were so offended by this clip from this movie, this movie trailer, is that it's a complete work of fiction, and nobody knows what happened on that plane, and to fictionalize it like that and make a movie out of it is really offensive.
You think it's in bad taste, even the fact that they are making a movie like this at all? That's I don't know if it's a fictionalization, but it's at very least a recreation.
Well, it's like those movies about Waco after it happened that showed what David Koresh said to his followers, and it's all made up. You know, it's not real, and it's offensive to be you know, exposed to this kind of propaganda.
Thank you very much for your call. In fairness to the filmmakers, they did a lot of outreach to victims' families, to the families of the people who were on that plane. And so this movie is more or less approved, authorized, by the families of the people who were on Flight 93. Now, that's not to say that the trailer was something that slipped through the cracks of their good judgment, or the fact that the trailer would be distributed in New York, and there may be some other parts of the country, perhaps Pennsylvania, where there would also be a negative reaction to this. But it's not like they just set out to make a sensationalistic film. They did work with the families. I think we need to give them that due.
They did, and they're not even the first ones to make a movie out of this. You know, I think it was actually around September there was a documentary on some cable channel that was reconstructing it in a similar fashion. So, in fairness to the filmmakers, this actually looks, as these things go, as a relatively tasteful kind of reconstruction of this, if you could call something like this tasteful at all.
In fact, there's an Oliver Stone movie about 9/11 also set to come out, I think, later this year.
Well, and that might be perhaps a little more fictionalized, given Oliver Stone's record with JFK and things like that.
Do you think we should expect the same reaction when the film comes out in a few weeks? Maybe not.
No, I think you probably can in New York City, but I don't know if New York is really the target audience for this. I mean, they're marketing this much more broadly than just New York and D.C. And, of course, they've picked this story just because it has that heroic storyline, and because, you know, in September 11th terms, this was not a truly devastating ending. Like, there's some redeeming value that you can pick out of this in some sort of Hollywood angle.
Right. Though, of course, everyone died. But that's, I think you're exactly right. That's why they chose this September 11th incident to make a movie of, obviously, because of the heroism angle. Let's take another call. Paulina in Astoria. Hi, you're on the air.
Hi. Well, I gave my opinion. Should I give it again?
Yeah, you gave it to the screen, and now you can give it to everybody.
All right. I feel that it's too fresh. It's something that maybe after many years, maybe 50, 70, 80 years or something, something of history maybe. But I think that it could be very harmful for the memory of the people who are, you know, so recently have to go through this. They haven't even finished with what they're going to do with that ground zero. So why do this? And why would I want to go see something so painful? I saw it with my own eyes. I don't need to see it again in a movie.
Right. It is a good question, and I think, and thank you for your call. I bet a lot of New Yorkers are asking themselves that question, and I wonder when this film comes out, even if it's an earnest attempt to portray the heroism of those individuals on the flight, whether attendance might not be what they would expect for a mass market film in the New York area. I'll bet it's targeted for the rest of the country.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I mean, my local cinema is actually the Battery Park Theater, which is literally across the street from the World Trade Center. I don't imagine I'll be going to see this film. I don't imagine, you know, that theater might not even show it.
Although another thing that we really have to mention here is that the Tribeca Film Festival has chosen this as its opening film. Now, for those of you who don't know, the Tribeca Film Festival, besides taking place in Lower Manhattan, was something that was created specifically to aid the economic recovery of Lower Manhattan after 9/11, and they have deemed this film worthy of being its opening.
I saw that, and that frankly surprised me a little bit. You know, I'm not, the subject matter is so sensitive that I'm a little surprised that they would do that with it. But again, they may be just trying to open a discussion and a dialogue of the issue, and obviously there's a lot going on around reconstruction at Ground Zero right now. So in that sense, I can understand it.
Let me take a step back from the issue of this trailer in particular, especially as it's seen in New York, to talk about trailers on the web in general. Because it used to be that the only place you would see a movie trailer was in a movie theater. Now the studios do upload them onto their sites, and trailers get a lot of hits.
They absolutely do. It's a brilliant marketing scheme. It costs the studios very little to put it up. You know, Apple has a whole movie website that's devoted to just putting trailers up. So it's really very smart, savvy marketing. And again, when you put something on the web like this, you're hitting consumers who want to see that, who want to see the trailer, are going to it very much on purpose because they have some interest in it already. So it's very, very savvy marketing.
So let's look at another piece of video that's being widely viewed online, and this is also something that was in the news. This is the video that Jill Carroll, the Christian Science Monitor reporter, made just before being released from captivity last week. Now, you'll remember that when she was first released, along with this video, there was controversy that speculated that she may have been a victim of so-called Stockholm Syndrome, that as a captive, she started to identify with her captors because she said all kinds of nice things about the insurgency in this video. So at the time that this aired on the news channels, people were looking at this video and thinking, gosh, that Jill Carroll, was she different than we thought she was all along? Did she have some kind of psychological breakdown during her 3 months in captivity? Well, now we're going to look at it in a very different light, because it seems pretty clear at this point that she was faking it in this video, that she was given conditions of her release that included doing this interview and saying positive things about the insurgents and the insurgency. So when we play this clip, and this is an extended excerpt that'll last a good couple of minutes of that Jill Carroll interview, probably more than any of the cable channels ran, you're going to look at it with a whole different eye. What does it look like when somebody who is a prisoner and is told that they will be released if they cooperate with this interview and say the right things? What does it look like when that person goes through those motions? So in that context, let's look at Jill Carroll.
How did the Mujahideen treat you?
They treated me very well. They treated me very well, like a guest. I was given very good food, kept very safe, treated very, very well.
Did you think the American Army or CIA would save you in any time?
I thought maybe they might. There was sometimes I thought maybe that they might come, they might find me, they might find a way to know where I am and come get me. I did think maybe they might.
Why didn't they save you?
Well, I think the Mujahideen are very smart. And even with all the technology and all the people the American Army has here, they still are better at knowing how to live and work here, and are more clever. Despite all the technology of the American Army, still more clever and better at being here than the American Army. They're still better at what they do.
Does this mean anything to you?
Well, I think it makes very clear. It makes very clear that the Mujahideen are the ones that will win in the end in this war. I think it makes very clear that even with thousands of troops and airplanes and tanks and guns, that doesn't mean anything here on the ground in Iraq. I think it shows that over time, maybe however many months are left in the occupation, that it's pretty clear that the Mujahideen are the ones that will have the victory at the end of the day. It shows that no matter what Americans try to say is happening here or try to do with all their weapons, they aren't going to be able to stay here. They aren't going to be able to stop the Mujahideen, that's for sure.
What would you tell the American people about the Mujahideen and the situation in Iraq when you go back to America?
Well, first of all, I want them to understand the Mujahideen truly. There are a lot of lies that come out of the American government calling the Mujahideen terrorists and other things. And I think it's important the American people hear from me. The Mujahideen are only trying to defend their country. This is only a jihad to stop an illegal and dangerous and deadly occupation. So I think it's important people see the Mujahideen are people like we've seen throughout history, resisting an occupation, trying to fight a foreign force in their land. It's their country, and they have a right to fight for their own freedom. So I think I want people to understand that it's not people that like to kill, not people that like violence, but people that love their country and want to see their country free of an occupation. And also I want them to understand that the situation in Iraq in general, how difficult it is here. People don't have electricity, they don't have water, the children don't have good, safe streets to walk in. Women and children are always in danger. Houses are always destroyed. People are killed left and right in the street without any reason. People die every day from the bombings and the shootings of the army and all these things. So I think people need to understand in America how difficult life is here for normal, average Iraqis. that every day is a matter of survival, of life and death for most Iraqis, and thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of Iraqis have lost their lives here because of the occupation. I think Americans need to think about that and realize day to day how difficult life is here, how terrifying it is for most people to live here every day because of the occupation.
Do you have a message for Mr. Bush?
Yeah. He needs to stop this war. He knows this war is wrong. He knows it was illegal from the very beginning. He knows it was built on a mountain of lies. And I think he needs to finally admit that to the American people and make the troops go home. You know, he doesn't care about his own people. He doesn't care about the people here in Iraq.
So an excerpt, that was about 4 minutes long, and at that it was only about half of the full video that was released by the captors of Jill Carroll. And again, to be very clear, we are playing that video tonight in the context of looking at it with different eyes now that it seems apparent that she was faking it for the sake of the deal that their captors seemed to be making with her, which is that she had the possibility of freedom if she said the right things in that video. And it's kind of like watching a mystery a second time after you know the outcome. You look for the clues, you look for the expressions in a different kind of way, much different than people viewed that video and much different than the media was using that video when she was first released, and people were speculating whether she had in fact been sympathetic to her captors all along or somehow been brainwashed or something like that. And so, Bryan Keefer, what do you think about the way the video was used originally by the press?
Well, I thought, you know, there was sort of this hair-trigger punditry that went off that started suggesting everything from Stockholm Syndrome to, in effect, that she had become Iraq's Patty Hearst somehow. I don't think we know anything right now about what her captivity was like for her. We don't know anything that went on. And these suggestions that she had somehow, you know, allied herself with the captors just based on this video, which her editor said she had 3 men with guns pointed at her head standing right off camera, you can't do that. I mean, it was absolutely ludicrous. And there was another video that she made, or another interview that she gave, technically after she was released, where she still said some sympathetic things, at least about her treatment, that she was treated well, that she later retracted. And she made very clear that even at that point, she was not confident of her safety. Even though she was in, I guess, American hands, she was still in Iraq, and apparently they had threatened her if she said harmful things to their cause, and she wasn't out of Iraq yet. Right. Well, I don't even think she had made it to the Green Zone when she gave that interview. I think she was at a local Iraqi political party headquarters. And again, I mean, just to speculate on her motivations like that based on, you know, somebody who's been in captivity for so long, it's absolutely ridiculous. And the speculation went really far, all the way into straight news stories in the New York Times, which is just frankly irresponsible. Let's take a caller. We have a caller on this one, too, and it is Janice in the Bronx, in the Gun Hill Road section. Hi, you're on the air, Janice.
Hi. I'd just like to say that I don't know how you can assume that what she's saying is forced or contrived. What exactly did she say that was incorrect? She said that they're fighting off invaders, and we are invaders, and that it's dangerous for Iraqis, and thousands of bombs are being dropped and thousands of people are being killed, and it was built on a pack of lies, and I think we know that. So why are we so quick to say that she was, you know,
well, I think
threatened?
it's certainly a legitimate question, and I think that it's not about those things, which may or may not be her opinion, I don't know. It's more about what she said in a complimentary way about the insurgency that seems to indicate to everybody that she was making it up. Right, and you know, she's since disavowed these things, as you say, and the point is that we don't know anything about her captivity, and that you can't speculate on her motivations at this point, other than you assume that she was trying to get herself out of harm's way, and that her captors had made this a condition of her release, and so she was doing it for that reason. And again, when you have people pointing guns at you, you're likely to say what they want you to say. Right. You're a media analyst, and there's been criticism from the administration about how the war is covered in the U.S. media. For example, that they don't cover the good things that are going on in Iraq. They only cover the kidnappings and the insurgent attacks and the deaths by bombing and whatever else. What do you think about that line of critique?
Well, you know, this administration is extremely media savvy, and the old rule is that all the planes that landed safely today isn't a news story. It's the one that blew up, and it's the bombing and those sorts of things that attract the immediate media attention. That said, it's extremely difficult for the press to move around in Iraq right now. You know, Jill Carroll, as you were just showing, was kidnapped as she was out trying to interview people. We sent a reporter from CJR there who kind of did a blog from Iraq for about 3 weeks, and he had trouble just getting from the airport into the green zone. So the conditions there are very, very difficult. And on the other side, there are reporters who are getting out there, who really are making an effort to find these stories. It's extremely difficult when you have a country that is so destabilized. What is your baseline for progress, right? I mean, where do you start, and what do you say, today is better than yesterday, when things are still blowing up in the street? It's just a very, very difficult situation. And as much as the administration would like to project the fact that it's the media just projecting these images out there, that's not the case. I mean, it's a very unstable situation, and that's how it comes across.
And since we're doing this again in the context of the web video series, what the administration can't blame on the network media is what people are seeing and passing around online. And I wonder if you have a sense of what kind of Iraq war video has become the most viral on the web.
Well, I think the kind that's become most viral is actually clips from soldiers themselves who are taking handheld video. I've seen everything from like a sort of hard metal hip-hop kind of video that was cut together with all kinds of clips of explosions and the U.S. military, you know, opening fire on people, you know, all the way to just soldiers in their daily lives and filming things and sending clips back home that are very affecting. So I think that that's actually a very good point. It's that a lot of this, because of the internet and because users can find what they want to see, is really a little less filtered than the administration would like to think.
In fact, on next week's program, you might want to make a note of this if you're interested in this topic, we will be interviewing an editor who put together a book of photographs taken by U.S. troops in Iraq. So we will show you a number of photographs, not as done by Newsweek or the New York Times or any of those media institutions, but by soldiers in Iraq and what they have shown to put forth as images that they want to distribute on the web and elsewhere. Well, speaking of Republicans and media coverage, our next clip was made by the Republican National Committee solely for distribution on the internet. And as you'll see, it's an attack ad responding to some Democratic Party calls for a motion to censure President Bush. Let's watch.
After September the 11th, I made a commitment to the American people. This nation will not wait to be attacked again.
The President broke the law of the United States of America.
The President of the United States has been breaking the law.
So you're saying that impeachment is a possibility?
I'm not ruling it in or out.
I'm not ruling anything out.
I want to tell you something. This is a lot more serious, a lot more like an impeachable offense.
The President is taking the necessary steps to keep America safe, it said. Who do you stand with? Now we're going to put out another question for you to call in and answer. Does that ad equate Democratic Party criticism with terrorism? What do you think? Does that ad, because this is the criticism of the piece, does that ad equate dissent from the Democratic Party with terrorism, the way they juxtapose the sound and the images and the words? What do you think? 212-251-0801, 212-251-0801. What do you think?
Well, if you look really closely at the ad, it's not an explicit equation with terrorism, but it's very heavily implied. You know, you start out with the footage of what appears to be a terrorist training camp and hooded people shooting AK-47s and blowing things up. and you have like the sort of heavy breathing, almost Darth Vader-ish over that first part of the clip, and then you go straight into President Bush is defending America. Democrats want to impeach him. There's no real discussion of the issues there. They frame it as we're just monitoring al-Qaeda calls to and from America. It's all okay. In some sense, trivializing the actual nature of the program. And then clips of Democrats. The idea is to create that association between terrorism, I think, and some of that Democratic criticism. It's just, it's an ad. That's how those things work.
And there's a certain amount of deniability there because they never state explicitly that Democrats are siding with the terrorists. I think one of the undercurrents, though, was the music, where certain aspects of the music, when they're referring to terrorism, recur when they're referring to the Democrats. So there's kind of a subliminal connection that I think they may be trying to make.
There's sort of that low throbbing underneath the whole thing. And the statements about the Democrats are framed mostly as rhetorical questions, where they say, censure, impeachment, is this what Democrats are doing about terrorism? The implication is clear, but you're right, it is deniable, and that's, they've figured out how to work those things. They know what they're doing.
The whole darkness of the music, the whole darkness of the mood of that piece, it almost recalls the trailer for that September 11th movie that we watched at the beginning, but this is a political ad.
Yeah, I thought of The Matrix. I think it's the green turquoise kind of background that they put those things against. But no, you're absolutely right. They're establishing that thematic connection between democratic potential for censure or impeachment and a terrorism.
And again, in the context of a web video series here, why do you think this is only on the internet and not running as a TV commercial?
First of all, it's cheaper to put it on the internet. You don't have to worry about a big media buy anywhere. Second of all, you're appealing to the people who want to see it. And the people, the great advantage of the internet in politics is it makes it so much cheaper to communicate directly to the constituents or to the people that you want to vote for you. So there's that direct aspect of the communication. And third is, I don't know that television networks would necessarily air this. I think it might be deemed too controversial, at least for some stations, to air it. So all three of those things.
A couple of calls real quick. Peter in Chelsea, I think, wants to defend the ad. Hi, Peter, you're on the air.
No, I don't want to defend the ad. Are you kidding? No, I think they're presenting the Democrats as like spineless and off point, and like he was saying, the way the video looks, I think it's actually also gearing to a much younger audience. It's really this like raw violence that they're portraying, and in that, how could these Democrats say these things? How spineless could they be? And if you put any logic to what they're presenting, you go, the whole time I'm watching, I'm going, but how could you say that? But what do they mean by that? But it's not about logic. It's about whatever they're trying to sell. So.
Thanks for your call, Peter. And of course, the point that the Republicans would use part of that as the defense, which is that they're just trying to say that the Democrats are spineless and off point, as the caller said. But of course, there are all those other implications that we talked about. Real quick, do you think that there is a demographic appeal here, perhaps to younger people, as he was speculating?
Yeah, I think he's right. I think when you're hitting the internet, you're hitting, it's usually younger and it's usually more male than the rest of the population. So I think he's right there.
All right. Our next video clip has nothing to do with politics, but it is another ad being shown solely on the net. This is a commercial for Nike featuring the Brazilian soccer star Ronaldinho, but you probably wouldn't guess unless we told you so. That is, you probably wouldn't guess it was a Nike commercial. Let's look. All right. Can even he do that time after time on the crossbar?
No, but the fact that you're asking that question is exactly the point of the commercial, because it really feels very realistic. As best as I can tell, he actually did hit the crossbar a few times, but it's sort of digitally composted, that, you know, and all put together there.
Right. And this is one of those things that is a commercial, but people are hitting on it. So we see, this is one of the interesting trends in web video these days. People voluntarily go to commercials that they know are commercials, which, you know, 10 years ago you might have thought nobody will do that.
Yeah, well, it's nifty. I mean, it's a cool little piece of video. And it looks like it could be a handheld camera that somebody just happened to have at a soccer practice, and you know, they just happened to have the guy with the gold briefcase hand him the shoes, and he just happened to do this. And you know, there was a Tiger Woods commercial, you know, also by Nike a few years ago, where he was dribbling a golf ball on his club, and that actually apparently was real. There's also one going on with LeBron James where he's taking shots from 95 feet away from the basket and hitting them all.
That's on TV, right?
Yeah, it is. And so it's part of a series there, but they all have that sort of feel of authenticity to them, and that's, you know, that's going to drive people to it for sure.
And they hope, and I guess it's cheaper to hope that this will happen, not that Nike can't afford regular television commercials, but hope that something becomes viral and becomes a commercial that spreads on its own.
Right, because then it's just free advertising, essentially. It's if people are finding this on their own, instead of you having to pay to go up on TV to spread this to thousands and thousands of people, it's a lot cheaper, and word of mouth is one of the most effective ways of marketing anything.
All right. Our last video for tonight also has to do with viral advertising. This one came from a project that Chevrolet did for its Tahoe SUV. Now, they made the elements of an ad available for download on their website, but they got some unexpected results. Let's look at one that may surprise you. And Chevy left it up on the site.
They did, and you know, it's sort of evil marketing genius in a certain sense, because to create that subversive ad, that's just been 30 seconds of clips of their car. So they, you know, no matter what you do in terms of putting those things together, you're still showing pictures of the car, and that's what they want.
Right, and there were some other ones like this too. Somebody put up, "What would Jesus drive?" caption on the ad, and someone else had some commentary on the damage that SUVs do to the environment. Do you think that Chevy expected this?
I think they did. I think that at this point the sort of social viral marketing type people are smart enough to know that something like this is going to happen. At this point, it's like, say anything you want about me, just spell the URL right. They're just looking for the publicity.
Right. If the only ads from this whole Chevy project that we saw on some of the video aggregating sites like iFilm and YouTube were ones like this that mocked Chevy.
Yeah, but the people who are making those ads mocking Chevy and probably looking at them aren't necessarily the people who are going to buy SUVs anyway. You know, you assume that they're not really interested in the car if they're creating these subversive sort of ads. And all that really does for Chevy is give them more exposure.
More exposure because the SUV is still on the screen. And I wonder how much you think this reflects an era, maybe a kind of desperation on the part of the advertisers in an era when people can use TiVo or whatever to just skip the ads on TV.
Well, and ads are becoming less and less effective as they do these studies. Like, you have to have more exposure to the ads to recall them. But you're exactly right. If you can have people participating in making the advertising, they're very, very likely to remember it. And everybody is going to remember that this is a Chevy ad, even if they hate it, just because of all the pictures of the car and because they know what the website is.
All right. Bryan Keefer writes for the Columbia Journalism Review website, cjrdaily.org.
You got it.
And you have a book called All the President's Spin.
You got it.
Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Coming up next, with the crucial Yankee Stadium vote taking place in City Council today, and the mayor so at odds with developer Larry Silverstein over the World Trade Center site, we will talk to New York Times reporter Charles Bagli, who covers land use in New York. This is Brian Lehrer Live.
prominent professors, outstanding students, illustrious alumni, all on the Emmy-nominated magazine show about CUNY. Hi, I'm Vianora Vinca. Join us this Sunday when we'll bring you the stories about people and programs that make CUNY a place where you study with the best.
This is Brian Lehrer Live. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30 on Channel 75 and as a live webcast at CUNY.TV. Now, if you have followed the news this afternoon, you may know a couple of things. One, that New York City Council has just passed the land use plan for the new Yankee Stadium that has some residents of the immediate area still so unhappy. The stadium still has to stand for another vote on the use of public funds, however, and there was a meeting between Governor Pataki, Mayor Bloomberg, Governor Corzine, and I believe Larry Silverstein that took place this afternoon that you may not know about yet. I'm not sure this is broken during the news, but let me reveal a little behind-the-scenes drama that we had today. We were going to have Charles Gargano, Governor Pataki's point man on Ground Zero redevelopment and Yankee Stadium, come on this program tonight. But because of this meeting, and because this meeting lasted so long with the mayor and the governor of New Jersey, he had to cancel, and we have instead New York Times correspondent Charles Bagli, who covers land use issues like this, including both Yankee Stadium and the redevelopment of Ground Zero. And Charles, thank you so much for pitch hitting on less than zero notice.
Sure, thank you.
And you got wind of this meeting, which I'm not sure was made public in the first place, but then went on and on and on and on. Did they come to an agreement now on the World Trade Center site?
Well, I think they're getting closer. The fact that it did go on was probably a good sign. The meeting was supposed to start around 3 o'clock. Governor Corzine came in from Jersey. Of course, Mayor Bloomberg came up from City Hall. They all met over at the state offices. This was not a meeting that included Larry Silverstein. The idea was trying to get everybody on the same page from the public sector.
Because what happened last week was there seemed to be an agreement in the works between basically Governor Pataki and Larry Silverstein, but then Corzine and Bloomberg allied with each other and blocked it. Is that accurate?
Yes. What's been going on, this has been going on for months. The governors wanted to get this thing done, and he wanted to have a press conference this month that celebrated the groundbreaking for the Freedom Tower, the largest of the 5 towers planned for Ground Zero. But the mayor, since October, has been issuing these sort of broadsides against the situation and questioning Mr. Silverstein's role. At the same time, some of the commissioners from the Port Authority, both from New York and New Jersey, have been questioning whether a new arrangement was going to be too generous to Mr. Silverstein and put a lot of the risk and financial burden on the Port Authority. Remember, Silverstein had leased the Ground Zero about 6 weeks before it was destroyed. And he is obligated to build all of the entire site, rebuild the entire site.
So we'll come back to the Ground Zero question and see if you can tip us off to what you're writing in tomorrow morning's New York Times about what actually happened at this meeting. But let's go to the Yankee Stadium question. Over the objections of many people from the neighborhood, City Council today did approve at least the use of land in the way that the Yankees want to use it. And I want to put up a map right now. This is a map that we showed last week as well, released by the opponents from the neighborhood. This is an aerial view of what would change. And you see at the bottom of the arrow, at the tail of the arrow, Yankee Stadium where it is right now, and at the top of the arrow, at the point where it would move to under the plan that City Council approved today. Now look at that long continuous stretch of parkland. And imagine what this is going to be like after Yankee Stadium moves to that very big stretch of McCombs Dam Park right in the middle of it. This is why they're so upset, or one of the reasons that they're so upset in the neighborhood. And yet, Charles Bagli, City Council approved this today?
Yes. This is a deal that's really been 20 years in the making. For those old enough to remember, Mayor Koch, back in the mid-'80s, was trying to get Steinbrenner to sign a new lease that extended the Yankees almost permanently, in their historic home in the Bronx. And there were certain demands made by the Yankees. At the last minute, the deal blew up. I don't think Koch has ever forgiven Steinbrenner. Doesn't have a lot of nice things to say about him. But then for years, you heard Mr. Steinbrenner sort of denigrate the Bronx, complain about the Bronx, and at one point under the Giuliani administration demand that he get a new stadium, $1 billion stadium on the west side of Manhattan. So here we are today where the Yankees are saying, well, we'll put up $800 million to build a new stadium, not in Manhattan, but in the Bronx. I think part of the problem is that a lot of the people, the Yankees haven't always been thought of as a good neighbor. They seem to ignore a lot of the people that lived in the neighborhood. They didn't have many people that spoke Spanish that worked there. A lot of people felt they were actually hostile. So when they come along with this plan, I think everyone's suspicion is already way up. Are we getting gypped?
And looking at that map, I can't help but wonder, let's say this was Central Park or Prospect Park. Would the city ever let any kind of private business put some kind of huge stadium or other building right smack in the middle of it and break it up and rebuild the park somewhere adjacent, but not continuously or contiguously? And, of course the answer is no.
Well...
Or is it?
They probably wouldn't, there'd be an uproar in Central Park, but if we look at Queens, I mean, there's a big park there, and Shea Stadium is there. They put Shea Stadium there in the 60s, and the National Tennis Center has expanded twice and taken up parkland. So it's not unheard of. What's interesting is that the expansion of the tennis center in Queens was done by the Dinkins administration. And Mayor Giuliani hated that deal, condemned it, and in his 8-year term refused to let anyone attend tennis matches in Queens. And so it's ironic that here we have Randy Levine, the former deputy mayor for economic development under Giuliani, now cutting a deal.
He's the president of the Yankees.
Right, for the Yankees that's very similar to what was done by the United States Tennis Association.
Interesting. Now, City Council balked at this last week and yet voted to approve it today. The only thing that I know of that changed is that they came close to a deal, and my understanding is they don't even have a deal to put a Metro North station at Yankee Stadium. What else changed? Anything?
Not really. There was a lot of arm twisting on this. I mean, as you can see, yes, it was one big contiguous park. Actually, there were two parks. Mulcahy Park is also there, and there's all apartment houses surrounding the park. So a lot of people used to enjoy just looking out their window and watching their kids play in the park, keeping an eye on them. Or in the evening, there's a track there. And in the warmer weather, people would go out. I mean, not just joggers, but older people would go out and walk around the track. That was their exercise. And so this was thought of, even though it was a pretty rundown park, the Parks Department had not done a lot of work there in years because there was anticipation that something, someday, would happen. So anyway, people were very upset about it, and they felt they weren't consulted.
So who twisted whose arm between last week's City Council postponement and this week's City Council affirmation? And what did they twist their arms with? Do you know?
Well, I mean, the objections were largely centered from the neighborhood. And we have a new council president, and I think she used
And she, by the way, Christine Quinn from the west side of Manhattan, was a leader of the movement against the West Side Stadium, which,
yes,
of course, she and her allies won, because in her case, as the council member representing the people who live there, it was seen as something that was so bad for the neighborhood. And even with that experience, she was willing to go and endorse this stadium against the wishes of the people of this immediate neighborhood.
That's true, and you're right to bring it up, because I think that to some degree there's a tie-in to the West Side Stadium. This was a situation where a lot of people were at odds with the mayor, and it was a big confrontation. And so it wasn't just Christine on the west side, but you also saw the project get stopped up in Albany. And I think that there was a general feeling you had to give something back. So it was right after the defeat of the football stadium in Manhattan that the legislature was asked to approve taking the parkland and turning it over to the Yankees. And in fact, it sailed through the legislature very quickly. There was no discussion, no debate, no demand for financial plans and all the things that were demanded of the football stadium.
They just laid down and rolled over, huh?
That's one way to put it.
When I interviewed the Bronx Borough President Adolfo Carrion on this last week, and he's been a supporter of the new Yankee Stadium all along, he made it sound like they have to do this, and they have to help subsidize it with hundreds of millions of dollars of public funds, as they're going to, because the Yankees will leave otherwise. That this is what the city does, especially the subsidy part, when they want to keep a business here. And it happens with other businesses, and now it's happening with the Yankees. Do you think there was or would be any realistic possibility that George would take his marbles and go to New Jersey or somewhere if they made the Yankees rebuild in place?
You know, there used to be the rumor that was printed in the papers occasionally that Steinbrenner was going to take the team to Tampa. And I said, yeah, he's going to leave the #1 media market in the world and trot down to the 17th largest cow town in the country.
We know now Tampa can't support a major league caliber baseball team.
I used to work down there for the Tampa Tribune, and no offense to anybody from Tampa, but I don't want to go down there again.
But going to the Meadowlands would be something different.
Well, I mean, George tried that. And back in, it was around 86 or 1987, there was a referendum in New Jersey where the Sports Authority was proposing to build a baseball stadium for an unnamed team, and it was a deal with New Jersey. It became a big political rhubarb, and just prior to the vote, it was around Halloween night, I think, the Sports Authority got a survey back that said they were going to be defeated 2-1. And so the head of the Sports Authority at that time called up George Steinbrenner and said, look, we're going down to defeat. And so the whole thing collapsed. I don't know that New Jersey taxpayers are anxious to build, to foot the bill for a big stadium. But I also have to say, as somebody who's covered the Yankee Stadium problem for 16 years, that the Yankees have come a long way. Remember, it wasn't too many years ago that they were demanding $1 billion stadium in Manhattan.
And now they're paying for most of this themselves.
Yes, I mean, they're using public bonds, so it's tax-free bonds, but they will be using their money to pay for it. Now, at the same time, it's public land. They're not going to pay taxes. They're not property taxes, and they're not paying rent.
We're almost out of time. We should just mention on Yankee Stadium that this is actually not the end of the road. There is at least one more vote in City Council that has to do with the public funding. The opponents are still at it, and this debate is not over. But bring us back to ground zero. There was this meeting today with Corzine, Pataki, and Bloomberg. Did they settle anything?
Well, I think they went a long way towards settling it, from what I can glean from talking to a few people who were attending the meeting or who were briefed on the meeting afterwards. I think in the next few days we'll probably see a unified proposal, and they're going to put it on the table and say, this is it, Larry Silverstein. This is the proposal we're making you. It's time to wake up and get this thing done.
Let's just show the Freedom Tower for a minute, at least as it was proposed in one of its incarnations. And the deal that was on the table last week had the Port Authority, the government, actually taking the burden of the Freedom Tower off the hands of Larry Silverstein and letting him develop the two more lucrative properties. But Corzine and Bloomberg were still worried that he would then run out of money as this was going on. He would take a big profit and run and leave the site only partly developed. So what do you think this unified take-it-or-leave-it deal, if that's what's coming, might actually look like?
Well, the dividing up the land has actually been the easier part. I think that it'll be a similar arrangement to what's been talked about, where the Port Authority takes financial responsibility for the Freedom Tower. This is the tallest, the most symbolic, and the most economically dubious of the 5 towers. The Port Authority will also have the 5th site, building site. They're probably going to sell that to a residential developer, and they'll also have the big shopping mall that they want to put there. Now, Larry will get to build, as you said, the 3 towers, 3 other sites on the best sites down there. And
we have 15 seconds. What's
okay,
the part that's going to be hard for him?
The financial deal is what everybody's been arguing about, is how do we make this thing work? How do we ensure that everything gets built? And I think they're going to make it a little more painful for Larry.
Charles Bagli, we look forward to your article on this in tomorrow's Times.
Yes.
Thank you very much for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's it for tonight's show. We're here live Wednesday nights at 7:30. Next week, an all-photography special edition. We will show you some incredible photos taken by U.S. soldiers in Iraq from one new book. We'll also sample from the greatest magazine journalism photography of the last 50 years collected in another book, and look at some of the images that New York City photo bloggers are uploading online. All that next week. And don't forget to listen to my daily radio show, weekday mornings at 10 on WNYC New York Public Radio. Tomorrow morning, the New Yorker writer George Packer on what American soldiers have learned about battling the insurgency in Iraq and whether those lessons have come too late. That's at 93.9 FM and AM 820 WNYC tomorrow morning at 10. Have a great night.